In the heart of Addo Elephant National Park, things were about to get out of hand. The rangers had just begun their daily routine, which included patrolling the park's territories, checking the watering holes, and observing the herds that roamed across the savanna. However, that day, a radio call put them on high alert. The voice on the other end was clear and urgent. "We have an emergency. A baby elephant is in trouble." The words crackled through the speaker, and like any decent human would, the rangers rushed to the rescue. They jumped into their vehicles and sped toward the coordinates they had been given. But they had no idea what they were about to find. Before we continue, make sure to subscribe so you don't miss exciting stories like this one every week. Addo Elephant National Park is the third largest national park in South Africa, home to 700 elephants and numerous other mammals. But the baby elephant in this story would become the protagonist of one of the most epic rescue stories of the past decade. When the rangers arrived, they found the baby elephant they had been told about desperately struggling in the middle of a watering hole. Its tiny legs splashed uncontrollably as it tried to gain traction on the slippery mud forming the walls of the pond. The water was dangerously close to its torso, and the calf looked exhausted. Time was critical, and every second they waited could mean the difference between life and death. The rangers knew that newborn elephants can weigh up to 120 kilograms and are extremely vulnerable. They are simply too small to fend for themselves, barely reaching a meter in height. What would be a minor obstacle for an adult elephant could easily turn into a deadly trap for a baby. The calf must have slipped into the watering hole while trying to drink, and now it couldn't get out. The youngest ranger darted toward the calf, ready to push it out of the water, but the group's leader grabbed him by the arm and said, "Look over there." They were not alone. On the other side of the pool stood a perfect semicircle of elephants. The entire herd was there. There were probably 10 or 15 adults, each weighing more than 5 tons, working together to save the baby. And that meant trouble. Because elephants are as gentle as they are extremely protective of their young. One wrong move and 6 tons of muscle could come crashing down on anyone foolish enough to underestimate them. As the rangers debated their next move, the elephants began spraying water from their trunks toward the edges of the watering hole, trying to soften the compacted earth. At the same time, other members of the herd used their massive feet to repeatedly strike the border, hoping to create a ramp the calf could climb. This behavior might sound unbelievable, but it is far more common than you might think. Elephants are incredibly intelligent. They use their trunks not only to drink and feed, but also to manipulate objects, including water and soil. Stomping the ground is a natural behavior for them when they want to dig, uncover roots, or alter terrain. Think of your dog digging a hole in your backyard to bury its favorite bone. Elephants do similar things, but for practical reasons. The rangers watched in fascination, but they soon realized that the herd's efforts wouldn't be enough. This watering hole had been built with reinforced walls to withstand all kinds of erosion. Whoever constructed it probably never imagined a baby elephant would fall inside. That put the rangers in a complicated position. For every centimeter of progress the herd made, the baby lost time and strength in the water. Soon its energy would be gone, and once exhaustion took over, the little elephant would drown. The most experienced rangers exchanged looks, knowing exactly what had to be done. They would have to risk their lives. Johann, who had worked in Addo for over 15 years, took command. "We need to act." "Now," he said, and the others followed. He looked confident, but inside he was terrified. The plan was to approach a highly stressed elephant herd desperately trying to save its calf. If someone had asked Johann to go steal a lion's dinner instead, he would have felt safer. In the animal kingdom, there is nothing more dangerous than a furious African elephant. They can weigh up to 6 tons and reach speeds of 40 kilometers per hour. 2 elephants are more than enough to crush a hungry pride of lions. If elephants weren't herbivores, they would be the undisputed rulers of the savanna. As the rangers carefully attempted to circle the watering hole, one elephant stopped digging and stared straight into Johann's eyes. He felt as if it were saying, "I know what you're trying to do." Johann sensed that the elephant wouldn't hesitate to charge as soon as they got closer. And if that elephant charged, the rest would follow. The lead ranger called for the excavator. They were about to attempt what could become the most dangerous rescue operation in the history of Addo Elephant National Park. The idea was simple. Use the same strategy the elephants were attempting and dig a ramp for the baby to climb. But there was one small problem. A problem they wouldn't notice until minutes later. The diesel engine roared through the air as the yellow excavator lumbered toward the watering hole. Birds scattered in every direction. The team held their breath, and the elephants stopped stomping. A worker named Thabo positioned the machine as close to the edge as possible and lowered the metal bucket. His bravery was worthy of an epic tale. He began tearing into the compacted earth, lifting huge chunks of mud and rock. The plan made sense. Create a gradual slope until the calf could climb out on its own. But there was another problem. Nobody had explained the plan to the elephants. The instant the excavator roared, the herd reacted. To them, that massive, noisy metal beast was the greatest threat they had ever seen. The matriarch let out a thunderous trumpet that echoed across the savanna like a war siren, and the operator was forced to retreat. As adorable as elephants may look, they have a long history as war mounts. From the Persian Empire to the kingdoms of Thailand, Burma, Siam, and the Khmer, elephants have been used to crush enemy cavalry. The excavator looked insignificant compared to that herd. 2 or 3 elephants could easily flip it over, and there were far more than that. But then the herd reacted in the last way anyone expected. Instead of charging, the adults closed ranks, forming a tighter defensive circle around the baby. But that would prove to be a mistake. In their protective panic, the elephants accidentally pushed the baby deeper into the center of the watering hole. Now the calf was struggling to stay afloat in deeper water. Its eyes blinked rapidly as water splashed into its mouth. Now it was truly in danger, so Johann shouted at the top of his lungs, "Stop the machine!" And the operator next to him killed the engine. Unfortunately, no matter how well-intentioned they were, the damage had already been done. The elephants were now on high alert, positioned aggressively between themselves and the baby. Some took short steps toward the vehicle as a mock charge, warning them to stay away. Sweat began rolling down Johann's forehead. He was drenched. He needed a new plan. And fast. The baby couldn't wait. He desperately looked around and saw the vehicles they had arrived in. 5 rugged off-road trucks, strong enough to serve as a barrier. His new plan was crazy, but it might work. "Listen up, everyone," Johann shouted. "We're going to use the vehicles to temporarily separate the herd from the baby." The others looked at him as if he had lost his mind. 3 trucks will move to disperse the adults eastward. As soon as there's an opening, Liam and I run to the watering hole and get the baby the old-fashioned way. The other 2 vehicles will form a barrier between us and the herd. Any questions? He was suggesting that 2 men, unprotected, jump into a watering hole surrounded by enraged elephants, touch the baby, and hope to live to tell the tale. Johann had volunteered himself, but he needed someone equally crazy to carry out the task. Before another ranger could speak, Liam, the youngest, stepped forward and said, "Let's do it." The clock was ticking. There was no more time to plan. The 3 designated trucks advanced simultaneously, making as much noise as humanly possible. They honked, yelled, and prayed they didn't crash. The elephants watched, confused, unsure what to do. Yet, startled by the sudden commotion, they instinctively ran. 3 trucks might not seem like much compared to a herd of elephants, but the secret to the rangers' success was coordination. There are documented videos of herbivore herds fleeing from 1 or 2 lions. If herbivores decided to confront lions and charge, they'd win 100% of the time. But most herbivores' minds aren't wired that way. They can feel fear like any living creature and react accordingly. And that was an advantage the rangers knew how to exploit. But this strategy would only work for a few seconds. As soon as the elephants realized the baby had fallen behind, they would return with full force to rescue it. The moment to act was now. Johann and Liam jumped from their vehicles and ran as fast as they could toward the watering hole. Behind them, the trucks positioned themselves strategically. But as soon as the trucks stopped, the elephants halted too. If they decided to charge, nothing would stop them. They could crush the vehicles like tin cans. Johann jumped into the watering hole without knowing exactly what was happening behind him and began awkwardly swimming in the muddy water. Swimming had never been his specialty. He felt the cold mud slow his movements, but didn't stop. He heard Liam submerge behind him. The baby elephant was about 3 meters away, still splashing weakly. And just as he reached it, the elephant seemed about to lose its strength. He placed his hands on the animal and began pushing. Though small, the baby was far heavier than many adult men Johann had known. It was scared and distrustful. But it also didn't want to drown, so it cooperated. Liam reached it, and together they helped the baby out of the water. The mud made everything slippery. At that pace, they might have needed rescuing themselves. They began pushing uphill to help the elephant climb. Then, with one final push, the baby was completely out of the watering hole and standing on solid ground. Johann slipped and fell backward into the mud. Liam tried to help him up, but he wanted to lie there a little longer, just a moment to catch his breath. The rescue had been a success. Mud wasn't going to ruin it. Unfortunately, the most complicated part of the plan hadn't been executed yet. They had to return the baby to the herd. This meant approaching the elephants without getting trampled. There was a chance that the moment the herd saw the baby, they might charge. Maybe they'd be lucky, and the baby would return to the herd on its own, Johann thought. He looked at the baby and knew that wasn't going to happen. It was disoriented, soaking wet, and not very willing to walk. Johann and Liam signaled the rangers to clear a path. They lifted the baby into one of the trucks and stopped a few meters from the main herd. The elephants trumpeted in the distance, clearly distressed. They had probably given up on the calf or assumed it was dead. These animals, as the rangers well knew, possess incredible emotional intelligence comparable to our own. They understand that death is permanent. The elephants had no way of knowing whether their calf was dead, but they knew what usually happened in such situations. If a group of predators pursued them, those left behind usually didn't survive. Every elephant has seen at least one family member or friend die this way. By the way the rangers had acted, they had behaved like predators targeting the herd's weakest. Perhaps the elephants were waiting for the humans to leave so they could mourn the calf. Yes, it's true, elephants also grieve their dead. They can even recognize if a bone belongs to one of their species, even if nothing distinguishes it as an elephant. If a herd encounters a corpse in its path, it often approaches, touches it, examines it, and eventually covers it with soil and leaves. Fortunately, that day was a happy one because nobody had died. All that remained was to reunite this family so each group could continue its life. But what was the smartest way to negotiate a truce with these elephants? When the baby walked behind its rescuers, the elephants seemed to stop crying. It would have been an adorable scene if it weren't for the fact that several adult elephants weighing tons were now watching them carefully. If the baby moved in any direction other than toward the herd, they would take revenge. The fate of everyone present depended on which way the little elephant chose to walk. Johann walked with the baby, while Liam returned to the truck. Approaching with a vehicle wasn't a good idea because of the noise it would make. He wanted the elephants to trust him. But that depended entirely on them. No matter what happened, Johann had done what he thought was right. The baby suddenly stopped. It looked at Johann, then at its herd. It didn't understand why this kind human who had just saved its life was pushing it away. But if it stayed with him, both would be in danger. He gently nudged it toward the herd again, and its mother walked to meet it. The baby ran to her like a happy puppy. Maybe ran wasn't the right word, but it trotted clumsily toward her as best it could. Within seconds, the baby covered the distance between them and began circling around her. She examined it with her trunk, touching every part of it as if to make sure it was truly safe and intact. No matter the species, mothers are always fiercely protective. The other elephants approached as well, joining the baby, and Johann returned to his team. In the distance, he raised his arms triumphantly and celebrated. But just when Johann thought it was over, the elephants did something none of the rangers had ever seen in their lives. As if in a movie, the herd turned toward them and touched their trunks in unison. It was beautiful, something straight out of a Disney film. These men had spent years working with elephants, yet they had never seen anything like this. Johann and his team didn't speak the language of elephants, but something inside told them they were being thanked. The entire situation probably lasted only a few minutes, but the elephants would never forget what had been done for them in their lives. They seemed to understand that humans had risked their lives to save one of their own. The rangers watched the herd slowly walk into the horizon one last time, and both groups went their separate ways. Similar situations have happened repeatedly, with elephants rescuing humans from drowning. For example, during the 2004 tsunami in Thailand, an elephant named Ning Nong saved an 8-year-old British girl by helping her climb to safety. There are also records of elephants saving people from rivers, demonstrating that they understand such situations far better than many people give them credit for. Perhaps this baby elephant will someday remember the humans who saved it and help one of us at the most unexpected moment. But behind the existence of parks like this lies a dark side. Today, the fight to save this beautiful species is far from over. While Johann and his rangers risked their lives to save this baby, poachers continue to hunt them indiscriminately for ivory. This has left only about 415,000 elephants in the wild. Monitoring an elephant is perhaps one of the most dangerous but also most rewarding jobs in the world. It involves protecting elephants not only from themselves, but also from humans who might shoot them as trophies. A few weeks after this brave rescue, Johann and his team were on a routine patrol when they encountered the same herd again. They recognized them by the markings on the adults and the baby walking with them. The calf now looked stronger and healthier. The herd was drinking at a different watering hole, which brought back memories for the team. Fortunately, the slope was much safer this time, so no swimming was required. They had to coordinate with park authorities to prevent such situations from happening again. But that is a story for another day. The baby stayed close to its mother, imitating every movement she made with its tiny trunk. It had been allowed to continue learning and exploring the world around it. Then the elephants and the rangers exchanged a long look from a distance. There were no ceremonial greetings, no melodramatic farewell. Everyone, humans and animals alike, continued doing what they had come to do. And so, wildlife carried on. But the real story was just beginning. The threat of poachers remained, meaning the protection of these noble and giant animals was far from over.